Awesome, awesome. So, welcome everyone. I'm Mohammed Shahzad Hussain. I am the multi-faith outreach coordinator with Faith in Place and also on the board with WNPJ, Wisconsin Network for Peace and Justice. And we welcome you all to our Fall Assembly 2025. And the theme for this Fall Assembly is Shaking the Roots. I call it roots, not roots. That's how I was taught in Pakistan. But coming here, I realized that people here call it roots, not roots. So I'm adapting to that. Anyways, so today is the third session of our Shaking the Roots Fall Assembly. And the theme and topic of our third session is environment saving our home. And we are very grateful that today we have Mr. Dean Muller from Wisconsin for Environmental Justice with us. He'll share his insights with us all. So let me start with introducing Mr. Dean. So Dean Muller is the president of Wisconsin for Environmental Justice and a certified investment management analyst with a distinguished career in education, broadcasting, business management, and ethical investing. A former educator and a radio host, Dean has managed and revitalized multiple businesses while integrating principles of social justice into corporate practice. With advanced certifications from the Wharton School of Business and the University of Chicago Booth School, he has advised major institutions on responsible investment strategies, including South Africa divestment initiatives. A long-time advocate of ESG, which stands for environmental, social, and governance, and sustainable investment, Dean continues to champion corporate responsibility and ethical engagement through his leadership at Wisconsin for Environmental Justice. And with that, I present to you my friend and great colleague, Mr. Dean Muller. Please, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, thank you. And I do have access to the PowerPoint, right? Yes? Share. All right, there it is, right? Okay. Yes, I am indeed grateful. Our organization has been in existence 2.5 years, and about that amount of time ago, the network took me in. We became a member, and you endorsed wholeheartedly what we are working on, which is the issue of environmental justice. So I am. You did that without hesitation, and I will always remember that, to tell you the truth, because not all social justice environmental organizations have been. And I don't want to, have not been as eager to pull a switch. I don't know why, but it takes some time. They need to get more familiar with me, with the organization, and all that sort of thing. So again, I sincerely appreciate that. I appreciate the opportunity to speak about this topic. I certainly often begin my presentations with disclaimers to say that all the things I'm not a scientist. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a civil engineer, which we deal with a lot of infrastructure issues in this project. And I'm not running for office. And I've never held elected office either. So these are all my things I'm not qualified on. And one thing I am certainly can speak to is the fact that I am old, and that I qualify for. And I think we can all remember the environment that we used to have in Wisconsin. We moved to the state in 1968. I can remember winters were long and hard. We shoveled a lot of snow, even in Milwaukee. We lived in central Wisconsin for at least 10, 15 years before we moved to Milwaukee. And, winters are winters. Some people complain about the snow, but, nature needs a good night's sleep, just like we all need a good night's sleep. So those are all things that play into this in terms of even in the last 5 years. The last 2 years, we've seen dramatic changes. And I think pretty impossible for me to think that people would ignore that reality, but we know that they do. Just a second here. Okay, there we go. So for some inspiration with respect to the environment, I'd certainly like to turn to our native friends in terms of their sayings. Starting at the top there, we might learn something about our relationship with the earth and the people who were the true conservationists, native people. And the Indians knew that life was equated with the earth and its resources, that America was a paradise. And they could not comprehend why the intruders from the East were so determined to destroy all that was Indian as well as America itself. Going on to a quote from Dee Brown, Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, which, by matter of fact, I used that as a textbook when I was teaching U.S. history. Did that for about 5 years before I went into corporate management. The white people were as thick and numerous and aimless as grasshoppers, moving always in a hurry, but never seeming to get anywhere, any place where they were going to. And finally, Sun Bear, the Chippewa, I do not think the measure of a civilization is how tall its concrete buildings are, but rather how well its people have learned to relate to their environment and to their fellow man. Certainly words to inspire us all. What I'm going to do and talk about three topics at the same time. I'm going to talk a little bit about my career, which is not necessarily all that special, but anyway, and also about corporate responsibility, which is fundamentally what we're talking about here in terms of the fossil fuel industry, and of course my journey through this period of time. I was basically hired to manage a business that was dysfunctional. I didn't know it was dysfunctional until I got in there and found out what was going on, and I was horrified at how dysfunctional it was. And turned out I became quite successful at moving that business to a successful mode of operation. And of course, these are mom and pop type businesses, smaller businesses, maybe 6 to 10 million in revenue. So not Fortune 500 companies by any means. And so then, I gained a good reputation of being able to do that. So I became more of a turnaround person. I would come in at the bequest of the owners to turn a business around. You're supposed to bring back the good old days, when the employees were happy and the customers were coming in the door and they were selling the product that they were making and so forth. And sometimes they had just missed the mark and they had borrowed more money than what they should have, et cetera. So I was brought in to fix all that. And one of the people that I became familiar with was a business guru at the time, whose name was Tom Peters, and he wrote a book in Search of Excellence. And he was analyzing business companies. And at the top, you see here, In Search of Excellence, highlighted the importance of customers and employees in achieving organizational excellence. So the essence of what he discovered in terms of businesses that were consistently successful and profitable year after year were those companies that listened to their employees and they listened to their customers and responded to what they were saying to them. Now, this is the modern day version of this. If you've heard of a book, I believe its title is Leaders Eat Laugh, which the theme and the title of that book gives you an indication of what they're talking about. Like you're in a cafeteria, the CEO isn't at the front of the food line. He's at the end of the line. He's making sure the employees are taken care of, et cetera, et cetera. And I realize that runs somewhat opposite of what we're seeing in corporate America these days, where executives get paid enormous sums of money and the rank and file are paid far less. So that is something that certainly motivated me in terms of how I at least tried to manage the businesses that I was working with. And I can say that I tried. Another aspect of my career is when I moved into the investment sphere of investing. One of the individuals that reached out to me, because I worked for large Wall Street firms, E.F. Hutton, Morgan Stanley, and Dean Witter were the three firms that I worked with. And the fellow you see on the screen here is Father Michael Crosby. He's a Capuchin priest. He worked out of St. Ben's here in Milwaukee. He has since passed away. He became a great friend. He would reach out to me because if you can remember, there was a time before there was an internet and before there was even cell phones. And he would reach out to me and ask me, he said, I need to have information on XYZ company, where they're domiciled at, and so that I can, basically have what he was working on is corporate engagement. In other words, he would own stock in a bad company and try to influence their operations through the avenue of being a stockholder in that company. That's corporate engagement. And one of the campaigns he worked very hard on was the Joe Camel. I think you can all remember this campaign because it was specifically something on the part of the tobacco companies that were targeting young smokers. This is a cartoon that made smoking seem very appealing and cool. And more kids knew about Joe Camel than they knew about Mickey Mouse. That's how powerful this ad was. And it lasted for about 8 years. And I was pleased to work with Father Michael Crosby to ultimately end that campaign. And the last thing that Father Mike was able to accomplish was getting a scientist on the Exxon board. He was just a great person, a very prolific writer. He wrote a book about the Our Father, and we all know what the Our Father. We can probably all of us recite it verbatim, perhaps, and we forget what the words mean. What the words mean. It's a radical manifesto. It's based on the Gospel of Matthew, very much a social justice gospel. And what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to, as it isn't, we're supposed to create heaven on earth, is the charge that we're supposed to do. It's not the hereafter, it's here. We're supposed to create heaven on earth here. And of course, that's a big charge. And, like I often say, being a Christian means, the bar's up here and you need to strive to reach to that bar. Just like, our Constitution of this country is a high bar, liberty and justice for all. It's a high bar, and we continue to strive to reach towards that bar. It's hard. It's not easy, but it's the charge that we are faced with. Here is another example of engagement with corporations, this is boycotting. This is don't own the stock in a company that you don't agree with. So this was a massive undertaking instigated by Reverend Sullivan, developed the Sullivan Principles, which basically said that any company that did business in South Africa, don't hold it in your portfolio. And he got major institutions to participate in this. And I'm pleased to say that the Milwaukee County Pension Plan reached out to me to assist them in doing this divestment of stocks that they held in that portfolio. The library board, the foundation board, did the same thing with their foundation. The social development pension portfolio did the same thing, and I was pleased to be able to assist them all in doing that. And that basically is a statement, and of course that continues to this day. I know there's a group of state retirees that are very much pressing the SQIB, the state pension plan, to divest from fossil fuel stocks, and I certainly support their efforts in terms of doing that. So that was another thing that I was involved in that shaped me and shaped my career and shaped the things that I do. Yes, I was the liberal, or whatever we want to call ourselves these days, progressive, yada yada, whatever. I was that guy that snuck in the back door of Wall Street and tried to bring about change with the investments that I was working with and the clients that I was working with, both as individuals and institutional investors. So now you have in a presentation like this, I think we have to look at the history of our utilization of fossil fuel. And what you see depicted here is 175 years, right? Going back to the Civil War, 1850 over here, and all the way up to the current of 2025, okay? And this, of course, would be the pre-industrial period during here where you see, and what's measured shown on the side here is a temperature increase, the 1.5 that is often mentioned. This is at zero. And of course, you can see during this period of time here, the amount of CO2 we're putting in the environment is basically negated by, the trees absorbing it, the soil, et cetera, and we don't put as much in the environment as we during this pre-industrial period. So some key points. Well, let me point out one other thing. We do call it fossil fuel, and this is something that I really want to emphasize is that the actual thing that we in all about in here 1850 is when we punched the first hole in the ground and extracted fossil fuel, gas, oil, and methane gas, and put a match to it and released all that carbon into the atmosphere. Okay, that's how we generate our energy. That's the main source of our energy. Now, how long ago was that those deposits formed? It's said to be 150 million years ago. Some say even 200 million years ago. So if we were drawing this graph out to the scale, I'm sitting here, and my left hand that would probably go down to Florida. That's how long it was, if we were drawing it to scale. That's how long ago those deposits were formed. So within the span of 175 years, that's 3 generations typically of a family, we have gotten to this point up here. So we are burning it up fast. That is the lifestyle that we have created here in this country. Now, I'm looking here, most of the people on this call probably fall in somewhere through here in terms of when you came onto this planet. I know I came on about here. So all of this, 70% of that is due to us in terms of what we have put into the environment. And of course, that's the thing that motivates me, is that not only do we need to stop putting it in the environment, because each year is more than what it was the prior year, although there's an exception. The COVID year, it does drop about 5% because, I mean, the economy was basically shut down. But the point is, we have to stop putting it in, and all the carbon that is in that atmosphere, which is said to stay around for 1,000 years, we need to extract that. Otherwise, it continues. We continue to the greenhouse effect, et cetera, and it obviously has significant impacts. So it's along and about through here that John D. Rockefeller, plugs that hole into the ground. It wasn't too much after that he becomes a multimillionaire, probably the largest, the most wealthy person in the world. And it's on in through here that in the 1990s, 1900 to 1910 is when we make the transition from horses to cars. Ford comes out with the automobile, the horseless buggy is what it was called. And and point being is that switch, and was a period of time when electric cars had a period of time where they were quite successful and very much accepted. But the gas combustion and the fact that Rockefeller wasn't selling gasoline out of the block, he was selling kerosene, and the product that would be used for gas, they just ditched that. They disposed of it because it wasn't of any use, and later on it was. So he had already developed a network of getting his kerosene out for the kerosene lanterns and all that sort of stuff. So it was a very easy transition then, so that automobiles, there was some, apprehension about being able to get from one place to another and keep your engine or your tank filled with gas and so forth. But anyway, that transition is made, and the point that we get to at this particular point is that we see that even on and through here, the gas and oil industry is branching out into other things besides transportation and industry. They're branching out into agribusiness, on and through here, and they are branching out into plastics, even as early as this period here. So the point we come to right now is that it's said that 67% of the methane that we extract from, or that is drawn out of the earth from fracking, 67% is that of the methane we draw out of the earth is done by fracking. Another statistic I want to share is that 33% of fossil fuel is going into plastics, so it's a big part of their business. They are certainly emphasizing the use of plastics. Use them; they're convenient. They tell use it. We recycle it, which we know that does not happen. It does not happen. And then finally, the plastics that we are using, 99% of that comes from fossil fuels. So, I mean, obviously, when I go to the grocery store and I see the carts going out with all those plastic bags, it drives me a little crazy. But nevertheless, that's, it's people, need to obviously wake up, understand the implications that this has. So I want to segue now into this family reunion. Okay. Nice looking family, right? It's, but this is not your typical family. I mean, I'm sure they're having their family reunion. They're doing the brats on or whatever, and the hot dogs and playing some croquet or whatever, but
today, much of that wealth goes towards philanthropy through organizations like the Rockefeller Brothers Fund and the Rockefeller Family Fund, both of which backed reports that suggest ExxonMobil knew more than it was letting on about the threat of global warming. Well, if the board of ExxonMobil is not answering your calls, this is your opportunity. What would you say directly to them?
If I was talking to the board of ExxonMobil, I would say that right now their company seems to be morally bankrupt.
These fifth-generation descendants of John D. Rockefeller are speaking out against the company to which they owe their prosperity. David Kaiser is the grandson of former Chase Bank chairman David Rockefeller. Valerie Rockefeller Wayne is the daughter of former Senator Jay Rockefeller.
Because the source of the family wealth is fossil fuels, we feel an enormous moral responsibility for our children, for everyone, to move forward.
They're doing that by looking back. The charities they run funded investigations that appeared in the LA Times and Inside Climate News. The reports suggest Exxon had been at the forefront of climate change research since the late 1970s and knew the burning of fossil fuels would warm the planet and could eventually endanger humanity, even while the company downplayed the science in a series of newspaper ads and television interviews.
This is complicated. Don't believe statements that say it's clear that things are warming. It's not clear.
ExxonMobil accuses the Rockefellers of conspiring against the corporation. In a phone call with CBS News, a company official described it as a coordinated campaign to vilify the company. A spokesman initially sent us a statement saying the reports were funded and then promoted by activists, claiming they're not credible and have been widely discredited. The company later retracted that statement, telling us they don't have a comment.
Now then,
one of the success.
I just hit the and we're back on track then as far as being able to seeing what I'm seeing, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, all right. And just a second here. You make an adjustment. No, that's not the adjustment I wanted. All right, so the basic response out of the fossil fuel industry, and it's been going on for decades, is they deny their product is damaging the environment. They've done a great deal of very good work in terms of providing disinformation about their impact on their product on the environment, and we certainly see a lot of double talk on their part in terms of basically covering their tracks. Now, one of the things I want to get to in this presentation, I just need to there we go. Okay. One of the things that, excuse me, back here. One of the things that Wisconsin for Environmental Justice is focused on, as the name implies, we're focused on litigation in Wisconsin, environmental, and in terms of environmental issue. And we are approaching this through litigation. The type of litigation that we are advocating is what is referred to as tort claims. Tort claims are handled in state courts. They would be similar to if I, was out driving around this afternoon and I ran over a pedestrian. That pedestrian would have certainly every right in the world to sue me to make them whole. To provide them with the necessary things that they need to get their life back on track as best they can. Maybe training in a new occupation, the monetary loss that they're experiencing, and so forth. So we're pursuing this on the same basis as that. So the fact that they've created a public nuisance, that their product creates a liability, they failed to warn us about the safety of their product. Consumer protection laws play into this. Fraud and deceit, misrepresentation, and even some states have even used the racketeering statutes that they have in their states as broad-based conspiracy on the part of an organization to deceive the public. So that fits the definition of racketeering. Point being here is it's a very important point with respect to this litigation is we want this in state court. The fossil fuel industry would like this in federal court. That would enable them to argue it on the basis of the Clean Air Act, or which we've had on the books since Nixon. We've had the EPA since Nixon, so they might argue, well, what's the problem? We've followed the law. We've been good citizens. But that's not the claim we're making. The claim we're making is basically we're seeking a monetary settlement in terms of this litigation, and the fossil fuel industry has petitioned the U.S. Supreme Court, the one we know, the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, the one we all know and love, and on 7 different occasions at least, the U.S. Supreme Court has remanded or put this litigation back in state court, which is where tort claims belong. So this has been a significant win for our effort. And, we continue to enjoy that. And of course, I think we all, the state of things in Wisconsin, our state Supreme Court is in a good place with the progressive majority. So this would be decided in state court. It would be a jury trial by a jury of our peers. They would determine guilt or innocence. And the amount of monetary damages would be determined by a jury of our peers as well. So this is, the type of framework that we emphasize when we talk to elected officials about pursuing this at the county, city, and village level, and also at the state level. The fact that we're in a good position to prevail. We can use, as you saw in that clip about the Rockefellers, we can use their evidence against them. I mean, they have massive amounts of internal documents that have now been uncovered, which basically shows that they basically deceived the public in terms of the safety of their product. Now, this is part of a national movement of at least 40 political entities that are pursuing litigation. A third of them are counties, a third of them are cities, and a third of them are states. So a large presence on East Coast and West Coast. And in the Midwest, we are basically surrounded by people who are entities that have filed. The state of Minnesota, the Attorney General filed there about 2 years ago. The city of Chicago filed this past summer, and the state of Michigan is in the process of filing. I always like to point out Imperial Beach, which is one of the first to file in 2017. So this hasn't been going on very long, because you remember tobacco took 25 years from beginning to end. So this has been moving along fairly quickly. Imperial Beach is a population of 25,000. It's a coastal city, and their issue is the fact that sea levels are rising and it's destroying their beaches. So that's the motivation for them to file, and of course for a lot of other damages that are occurring.
Dane County is spending money to dredge the Yahara River here behind me in an effort to try and get floodwaters.
Are we set up to be able to hear this one?
Yes.
Okay, great.
To drain.
This is, whoops, let me go back. This is a piece that came out of Madison. Dane County is spending
money to dredge the Yahara River here behind me in an effort to try and get floodwaters to drain faster. And a new report from the Center for Climate Integrity shows that Wisconsin communities are going to need to spend more of your tax dollars in the next few years to tackle more projects like this and adapt to climate change.
This new report estimates the costs Wisconsin communities will face in adapting to climate change between now and 2040. It says in total, Wisconsin will need to spend nearly $17 billion over the next 17 years protecting communities from the effects of climate change. That figure includes $5 billion for additional road maintenance, more than $2 billion to shade communities from hot summers with trees, and nearly $7 billion to mitigate flooding like the state saw this past week. Center for Climate Integrity President Richard Wiles doesn't think the report captures the true cost.
And there's just many, many more impacts that we didn't quantify that will up this number. So, $17 billion is kind of a lowball estimate.
And Wiles warns waiting to protect communities will amplify climate change's toll.
And that just means that the impacts down the road will be more severe, the damage will be more severe, and the costs will be more severe.
These costs do not come at a convenient time. Wisconsin municipalities are struggling with budget shortfalls right now. Madison, for instance, will begin its budgeting cycle $22 million in the hole. But the climate is changing whether we can afford to meet the problem or not. In Monona, JT Siskowski, 27 News. Dane County is.
So these are some of the costs that we can certainly pinpoint when we have discussions. One of the easiest ones to look at is the increase in insurance rates that have gone up astronomically. We saw a tornado in Wisconsin in 2024 in February, which has never happened before. We've seen excessive droughts. We've seen, obviously excessive rain. We just had a major event here in Milwaukee with the flood damage that occurred. We're seeing many different aspects of climate that are changing, and of course, the thing one needs to keep in mind is that yes, we've always had floods, no question about it, but the level of the intensity of those events will be far greater, and the frequency, they will be more frequent. is the issue that we all need to keep in mind here. One of the exercises that I did here in this slide here was basically look at the cost of it, particularly relating it to individual costs in terms of what impact it has on Wisconsin households. I looked at the top here from the year 2000 to 2020. There were 19 severe storms, 2 floods, and 6 drought-related billion-dollar strategies, resulting in $100 billion in impact. Wisconsin spends $14 billion to import fossil fuel into our state because we don't generate any of our own. If we were to home grow renewable energy, it would add about $16 billion to our economy. Our study pointed to the $16 billion that we just shared with you, and the fact that we pay an enormous subsidy. The International Monetary Fund pointed to the fact that close to $750 billion is what we spend in terms of subsidies to the fossil fuel industry. So what that amounts to is $53,000 to each household in Wisconsin. And of course, you can always ask yourself, what did each household do with that kind of money? And of course, the corporate execs at the fossil fuel industry get paid an enormous amount of money. And I'm trying to get to some of the slides I want to share with you with respect to, and also allow for some time for Q&A here. One of the things I do want to emphasize before I go to showing you some specific information about specific municipalities and cities and villages in this state is to talk to you in terms of we do have a petition on our website, which is very valuable to us to show the impact and the desire on the part of Wisconsin citizens to pursue this type of litigation. The $16 billion that was mentioned, 70% of that falls on cities and counties across the state of Wisconsin. And the other thing that you can do to help support what we're trying to do, because I know you all are people that are action orientated and want to do something about the situation that we're in. If you're members of groups, certainly interested in speaking to those groups and getting their endorsement of what we're trying to do. An organization as young as ours is really trying to build credibility as quickly as possible. So like I mentioned at the top of this conversation, I really appreciate the endorsement from the network. It means an enormous amount to us in terms of building our credibility. We want more people signing the petition, which builds our credibility. All these things are really important in just building relationships. The other thing I want to emphasize too is that we often look at climate and climate issues on a global basis. Yes, it is a global problem. What's going to happen at the next COP meeting, for example? Obviously that's important, but we know that that's, they have no teeth to enforce anything in terms of the nations that participate in that. When you look at survey information, people often look to the Congress, to DC for solutions for this problem. They often look to the State House for solutions to this. But the thing we are emphasizing as we talk to elected officials across the board, because the study that we commissioned, which pointed to the $16 billion, that information can be broken down to each individual city or county or village or township in the state of Wisconsin. And we can put that in front of elected officials, members of the common councils, supervisors, village boards, et cetera, to show them the impact that this has or will have moving forward in terms of their infrastructure needs. I think it's fairly fair for me to say that there's 2 key issues that make up what we're talking about here. One is a moral issue, and that the moral corruptness of a corporation that certainly is not performing as a good citizen at all. They operate a one-way business plan where they shove the stuff out the door, and it's up to us to clean it up, whether it's plastic or whether it's the cleaning of the water or the air. But there's also a significant monetary issue that has an impact on all of our communities. I think we can all look at our individual communities and look at some of the things that don't get paid for, things that get dropped from budgets because money is so tight at the local level. And that's the thing that the case that we're putting in front of elected officials, that where are you going to come up with the money to deal with these obvious infrastructure needs that are going to be happening because of climate change? So that's the the message that you know, we need as much help with as possible, because we all know that you know, a social justice movement is based upon personal relationships, people you know, elected officials you know, and building relationships with them on this particular issue and enlightening them about what we have learned about this particular problem, and how we can bring about that kind of change. Now, Shahzad, I'm trying to get rid of the PowerPoint here, and it's covering my whole screen. So let me see it. Okay, now I got it. Okay, I want to share something else here. Just let me. While I'm doing that, are there questions that I can answer for people?
I'm sure we have a lot of questions.
Good. I like a lot of questions. Uh, let's look at Green Bay, for example. On the cost study, let me get this expanded. Where, oh, where? All right, here we go. All right. So some of the things that were in the cost study were things like cooling centers, for example. You need cooling centers because of the hot summers, etc. AC installations, we're going to need to install more air conditioning because our public buildings don't have it, and the temperatures are going to get warmer and warmer. We need to plant trees. Urban canopy is a great, a significant thing that will have a positive impact on the problem. Storm drainage is another issue. Road maintenance and coastal protection, because this is for the city of Green Bay. So the total on climate cost for them is $151 million, and their annual budget is 203. So again, you see a very close relationship between their annual budget and the amount of that they're going to have to pay for these climate remediation costs. Let me shift gears here and quickly call up another one. Just a moment. Let's deal with the smaller one. Stella, Wisconsin. Has the group heard about Stella, Wisconsin? Been in the news lately. It's up near Rhinelander. The paper mills were spreading their waste out on the farm fields for decades. Problem is it has PCBs in it, so it's been in the news. I haven't talked to any elected official in that area, but you can see their climate cost there is $1.5 million, and their annual budget is, you know, like $400,000. So over the next 16 years, they're going to have to come up with the money to pay for some of the remediation costs, which are maintenance costs. Storm damage are the two big categories that they have to face. So each community is different, and we have, as I said, data on all of them to share with elected officials. So it is a very powerful document that we can use to make the point. I picked Salt City, heard on the news that they had a very nice No Kings protest in their city this past weekend. So what does their look like? They need to install air conditioning units, free canopy, storm damage is a big issue, road maintenance is a big issue. So their cost of doing all that is $7.6 million, and their annual budget is $6.2 million.
So a lot of questions. We are seeing a lot of enthusiasm in the chat. So Erica just signed the petition right away. She said she will sign the petition. And also that was very interesting, the way that you are looking at this issue from the economic aspect. I think that is really powerful, and that helps to convey the issue to the legislatures in a way that they understand, and anyone can relate to that, which is
right.
Really
the other
nice.
thing we build on too is 71 of the 72 counties participated in the opioid litigation, where again that was pointed at the there we go. Hey, what do you think of that? at the pharmaceutical companies. So each pretty much 71. Polk County is the only one that didn't participate. Why, I don't know. But anyway, 71 of the 72 counties are receiving opioid funds. That was $750 million for the state of Wisconsin, and 70% of that is going directly to cities, counties, and so forth. And that obviously provides money that they can use in there to deal with the problem that they have that's been caused by opioids, again, caused by the practices of the pharmaceutical industry and not informing the public about the addictive nature of opioids. So that is, a good parallel to use when you talk to elected officials. And we assume that even a very conservative supervisor or member of a common council did cash those checks from the opioid settlement. They are using them. They didn't send them back or anything like that. So again, you can even, in my mind, I'm not someone who's anti-paying taxes. I think taxes are what we pay to have a civilized society and have, roads and bridges and infrastructure that meets our needs, etc. So I don't put myself in that card. So I willingly pay my taxes. But on the other hand, we have to also say that this burden is something that the fossil fuel industry has ignored and walked away from, and is not taking any responsibility for. And so we need to get you call them out on that and have them be part of the solution in terms of paying money to help balance city, county budgets, etc. So.
Yeah, and in the end, like when you show the statistics of total cost per Wisconsin household is up until like 2040 per household is $53,278. And I'm thinking a lot about all the lower income and the middle income households. Like the top, they don't care, like it's fine for them, but the burden is on a lot of these families who are already struggling, and they're not the ones who are polluting, honestly. And yeah, which is so shocking.
The thing I would add to that is the amount of people who are participating in the SNAP or food stamp programs is not just in cities, it's in rural areas too. At least 30% of the population statewide is on food stamps. So there's certainly a lot of hurt, a lot of poverty, a lot of strained household budgets out there, and having some other source of money coming in. And when we talk to an elected official, elected officials, often we approach them with a problem that we want them to solve, right? So I think an approach that we found is very effective is to say, we're coming to you with a solution. The solution is more revenue for your municipality, your city, your village. And by the way, this money will be typically not paid as one lump sum in terms of the settlement. It's usually paid out over a period of, usually a decade. In some instances, that's how the tobacco settlement was structured. That's how the opioid settlement is structured. It's paid out over, I believe, 16 or 17 years that each municipality or city or county will receive those benefits. And again, I mean, I go to other examples. I mean, the Wolf Fox River cleanup was $1 billion cleanup. And who paid for that? In that situation, the paper mills that caused the problem were sued, and they ultimately paid. They were sued by the federal and state government. Now we have a river cleanup going on here in Milwaukee because we have three major rivers that flow into as part of the actuary. That's a $500 million project, but the taxpayers are paying for that though. There's no, I mean, the industries that caused that problem are long gone. And the mess that they left behind is for us to clean up and restore that river to at least something that is not completely back to the way it once was, that's for sure, but at least you can eat the fish more frequently than what you can now. That's what we end up with this kind of corporate pollution that goes on.
Exactly. And I love the way that you're stressing on the solution, because normally as activists, when you share our concerns, they're saying, oh, okay, these big wealthy people, they say, okay, what is the solution?
Right.
And we are like,
right.
And you are presenting the solution, which is really, really powerful. So, okay, I'm very enthusiastic. enthusiastic about what Mr. Dean is doing, and that is really hopeful. But I want to open up for questions. Please, anyone can jump in.